Hello, my name is Jade Tweedy and I am the Intensive Interaction Coordinator at Greenmead Primary School. The following presentation will give you some important information about intensive interaction as a strategy. It is a strategy that we use in the majority of pathways at Greenmead. This presentation aims to support you in using it at home, and it will give you some important techniques you will need to begin using the approach, as well as some information around how this may benefit your child. So, what is intensive interaction? Well, it's a very practical approach to supporting the development of communication for people with various disabilities. It was developed by Dave Hewitt and Melanie Nind in the 1980s, and it's very much based upon sound research into parent-child interaction. As an approach, it aims to support development of the fundamentals of communication, which you will see in the next slide. And really, where intensive interaction differs from other approaches is that it's extremely child-centered. It's based around going into the child's world rather than forcing the child to come into our world. It's looking at what's important to them and stemming communication and interactions from there. It's about empowering our pupils to use their voice and to enjoy interactions and not be frightened that the way that they interact will be rejected by their communication partner. At Greenmead, we strive to support our pupils to develop into confident, independent young people, and intensive interaction is one of the ways that we achieve this in terms of their communicative skills. These are the fundamentals of communication. They are something that we use particularly in the sensory pathway, but they are also used in the early years pathway as well as the semi-formal pathway. They are not hierarchical. We do not start at one end, i.e. enjoying being with another person, and work through to vocalizing and using vocalizations meaningfully. Children may develop in one more than they do another. They may have quite a spiky profile where they develop their concentration and attention span, but do not use eye contact. This is all fine. Having said this, in order to become an effective communicator, children really do need to develop a good understanding in each of these fundamentals. Before Tristan was introduced to intensive interaction, he was quite solitary, no engagement with peer interactions and very little with adults that weren't very, very well known to him. Tristan did not take long before he was willing to share things like personal space. He began giving brief moments of eye contact and generally became a very different child. When at school, Tristan would have many opportunities to take part in these sessions. They were not particularly planned. It would just be adults taking the opportunity to go and sit with Tristan and spend some time with him and go from there. After around a term of working with Tristan in this way, he had already begun to develop his concentration and attention span. This could be seen through the fact that he was able to come and join in a whole group good morning session, something which previously Tristan was able to participate in around 30 seconds. It went towards the 5-minute mark at one point, which is fantastic progress. And within the fundamentals of communication, he's also, as you can see in the videos, which I will show you later, he was enjoying being with another person, learning to do sequences of activities with a person, waiting for an adult to respond to his actions or his vocalizations. And the biggest one really for Tristan was sharing personal space. Previously, if an adult came into his space, he would more likely than not get up and move away. We see this with lots of children. But something that intensive interaction really gives to these pupils is a feeling of respect, and a feeling of meaningfulness between interactions between pupil and supporting adult. Tristan also learnt to begin to regulate and control his arousal levels. You can see in some of the following videos where he begins to display stimulatory behaviours, and by being drawn back into the interaction, these dissipate, which supports Tristan in feeling regulated. The videos I'll be showing you during this presentation document Tristan's journey through using intensive interaction, whilst also giving you some practical techniques to use at home, which you will be able to see demonstrated in the videos. These are some of the techniques that you will see used in the following videos. They are by no means an exhaustive list, rather some that you will need to get going with your child at home. So, one of the first techniques I'd like to point out to you is the use of pauses. So pauses allow your child to have essential processing time. Some of our children can sometimes take upwards of 5 minutes to process something. So pauses really allow them to take what's just happened, process it, and then give their reaction. If you don't use pauses, the interaction could feel rushed. It could feel as though you are trying to gain a goal from your child, which will defeat the purpose of this interaction being for sociability. It will become more functional. Pauses can sometimes feel uncomfortable. I know myself, I've had pauses of upwards of 5 minutes when interacting with a child. However, what can be gained from your child coming back to the interaction after this time is more powerful than you rushing on. As you can see in the video, during the pause, Tristan is very close to my face. This in itself is meaningful for Tristan, as he is very close in personal space sharing. He's also giving direct eye contact. If I had begun vocalizing and what we call pushing on the interaction, this could have been lost. As a technique, having an available look and body sounds as though it's quite simple to do. However, if you are not thinking about it enough, sometimes your face may not look as available as you might want it to. Something I would recommend, which helped me when I was learning this technique, is to film yourself and look back at what your face is doing during interactions. Because whilst sometimes you may think that you're smiling and you have a very open and friendly looking facial expression, you may actually not. So yes, I definitely recommend actually filming yourself when you do have interactions with your child to see what your face looks like. But really, I mean, what you want is to just look as open and friendly, and when we say the word available, it means that you're ready to be interacted with, and you're going to be responsive. And in terms of body, it's just sitting with your arms on either side, not crossed across your chest, or sitting with your legs in a long leg position rather than cross-legged. Just making yourself as approachable as possible. Communicating in this way for some of our children can be quite daunting, so the way you're you position your face and your body can be an easy way to reduce some anxieties around communication. Positioning is important as it can really have an effect on how the interaction feels for both you and your child. You'll notice in the video that at first I'm sitting down, I'm below Tristan's eye line. That would usually be something I would recommend, trying to be below the eye line so that it makes it easier for any incidences of eye contact, no matter how brief they are. But yes, you can see in the video Tristan actually pulls me into a more upright position. This was the first time that he had actually initiated changing my positioning. And this has come about through me changing position when I feel that it could be better. The interaction could be made better by me changing, whether this is sort of getting up onto my knees or lying down with him. Positioning really does need to be something that just flows with the interaction. You also need to make sure when you're thinking about positioning that you're comfortable, and your child is also comfortable. I've had interactions in the past where I've actually been quite uncomfortable in the position I've ended up in, and then the interaction has gone on for upwards of 5 minutes. And when this happens, you don't want to stop interacting because you're having that special moment with your child, or in my instance with the people I used to work with. So I ended up being quite uncomfortable. So I think that's something to think about as well, comfort. And obviously if you're comfortable, the interaction is going to be more relaxed just by nature. As I said previously, I think one of the main things to think about when you are positioning yourself for an interaction is the eye line, to make sure that you're below the eye line of your child. As I said earlier, it just makes eye contact much easier. There are many different ways to respond, some of those being vocally, with facial expressions, and also with body movements. In the video, Tristan and myself show all three of these. At some points, Tristan is vocalizing, so I'm vocalizing back. Other points, I'm using my face to give meaning to the vocalization, to show him that I've listened, I understand. And then also some with body movements. So, for example, at one point, Tristan sort of throws himself against my chest. Rather than imitate that, because it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate, I bring my arm around and give him a pat on the back. All of this stuff is not planned in the moment. It just naturally happens. And this goes on to something I'll talk about a little bit later, called tuning in. But that really is what I'm doing during this video. I'm responding to him in different ways, but to do that, I am really watching what he's doing, thinking about how he's feeling, what's he getting from this at this point in time. So at some points, Tristan starts to become slightly overstimulated, so that's when I would pull back on the vocalizations as a way of response, and maybe just respond with my facial expression, because a vocalization could become too much, and Tristan may then decide to end the interaction. So this should always be very organic, and as I said, in the moment. One way in which you could use body movements that is different to what you see in the video of Tristan and me is if your child is laying down and they're having a calm moment and you've decided to go and lie down with them, you could gently pat their back in time with their breathing. It's also why positioning is so important in terms of facial expressions, because to be able to see your face, your child and you need to be in a good position where it's easy for them to just look at you. Usually I would suggest being below their eye line, but as you can see in the video, I'm actually above Tristan's eye line, but this isn't really affecting the interaction. So it really is what's working in the moment, and with positioning, knowing when to move. Vocalizations also do not need to be identical to the vocalizations that your child is presenting. For some children, it works really well as a beginning point to imitate their vocalizations as accurately as you can, because it can pique interest. However, it's not necessary to do that every single time. Obviously, you want it to be similar-ish, but it's nice to add on a different pitch at the end, or make it slightly longer or slightly shorter, because all of that is going to interest the child and it gives variety to the interaction. You don't want this just to be a complete imitation. It needs to be a conversation. It needs to be a two-way thing. So changing up your vocalizations to those that your child is giving to you works really well to maintain interest in the interaction for your child and also for yourself.
Did you find those spiders yet? Look, what are you doing? Oh, what are you doing? It's cotton wool. Big cuddles. Big cuddles. It's cotton wool.
So minimalism really is about not doing too much, not pushing on, letting the interaction run organically, taking what your child is giving you in their interaction, in their vocalizations, in their body movements, and going with that rather than adding something new. So for example, if your child goes to hold your hand, not then clapping their hand, just holding their hand. Sometimes this can mean just sitting with your child, just with them in their space, sharing space together, can be enough and can be a good starting point to get into an interaction. I know with Tristan in the beginning, we would do a lot of just sitting together, and eventually we began to share space, and then we began to have interactions more vocally, and so on and so on. But there is nothing lost in just taking some time and going and sitting with your child and just being there with them in the moment. Think also of this time together as completely non-directive. Don't go in thinking, I need you to come to the table because it's dinner time, or it's going to be time to go to the toilet soon. This time that you spend with your child should be completely just between the two of you, with no goal, no direction other than to spend time together. When interacting with your child using this approach, it's incredibly important that you always let your child lead. This takes the pressure of directiveness away from your child. It makes it not feel like a task, as it shouldn't be. It's about interacting and you allowing your child to express themselves without the feeling of there needing to be a goal or an outcome of the interaction. The interaction should just be for fun and to demonstrate how being social and sociability in general is something that as humans we need, and it should be an enjoyable experience. As you can see in the video, I am allowing Tristan to lead and I am responding to him through imitating his actions. So when he begins to clap, I have my hands flat so that he is able to clap, but I don't start clapping back with him until he has clapped. This is just a simple way of showing him that what he's doing I recognise, and giving meaning to these actions that he is displaying. And as you can see, Tristan is very happy in the video because he's in charge of the interaction, and the interaction I am giving meaning to, and emotionally that will feel good to Tristan.
You finished. Thanks, Tristan.
Tuning in its essence, basically means being present throughout the interaction. So not focusing on anything other than what is going on between you and your child within the interaction. It means not having any thoughts in your mind other than wanting to share this time and space with your child. When you are really tuned in to the interaction, it becomes easy to read the emotions of your child, and therefore structure your response, i.e. whether you respond through vocalizations or body movements, etc., to what they need in that moment. I think an easy way to know that you are tuned in to an interaction is feeling as though you and your child are just in a bubble almost. So anything going on outside of the bubble has no effect on your interaction. When you are tuned in, also, you can create a real feeling of flow in the interaction, and you really can create these very special moments between you and your child. This last video really was a great moment between me and Tristan. It was the first time he'd really initiated an interaction and led throughout the entire interaction, come very much into my personal space. There was eye contact throughout, and I had no idea what had happened in the classroom whilst I'd had this interaction, which, made me know that I'd been tuned in throughout. And I really do think that because I was so tuned in, that allowed Tristan to feel safe within the interaction we were having, and really, really show off all of his abilities in terms of actually having a conversation and enjoying the moment.